All right, everyone. It's your boy, Ernest Dove, once again, ready to talk some Mets, specifically the prospects. I'm going to name out probably up to 20 names right now because you know what? It's spring, baseball's back. Let's talk Mets prospects all around the farm system. I don't always talk about the top prospects, so don't worry about that. I'd rather talk about some of the other prospects you might not be familiar with, or maybe you've started hearing their names because of me, hopefully, because I want to talk more about them now for the new season. And you know what? Let's just get things kicked off right away. Let's talk about as many players as possible. Now, one of the younger players that might be some of the most exciting to think about in 2025 is Chris Suero, who's a kind of a catcher slash corner outfielder, which is always kind of interesting to say. And I believe he can adequately play both catcher and outfield. This is one of those uber super athlete guys that I was hearing about from last year. When I tried to ask the coaches, hey, where's he going to play? They were basically said, Dove, don't worry about it. He can play multiple positions because of his athleticism. Uh, Also talking with the coaches last year through the summer, they did like his progress specifically catching wise. So even when I tried to ask, maybe outfield will be better, but I was basically told why. We like the progress he's making week to week from a catcher only standpoint. So I'm curious. Number one, at his age now, I believe he's turning 2021 during this season. Kind of curious where they want to go with him level wise. Does he break camp maybe in Brooklyn? A guy like Stearns is probably going to push players, especially like this with his kind of versatility. It'd be interesting to see, but I think Chris Suero is one of those guys, top 30, top 20, might move into the top 10 at some point if he's not almost there already, based on certain lists, who has a high excitement for him. But be on the lookout for Chris Suero. Uh, another name to bring up, catcher slash first baseman, Ronald Hernandez. He and Marco Vargas from that Marlins sell off trade. Another year in, looks like he's about age 20, 21 at this point. He's a guy that could definitely walk. He draws his walks. He gets on base. I haven't seen a lot of power. Defensively, I don't really know about elite skills either at catcher or first base. So, one of the interesting things about Ronald Hernandez, will the OBP continue to be high up the levels? But even if it is, what will the power ever look like, and what would his position play? Could he? What kind of feel? What kind of projections can you have for him? I would say he belongs in like a top 30 of sorts in the Mets prospects, even if it was catcher only. But I'm kind of curious. There's other catchers, including Chris Suero, and then of course the top dogs like Giovanni Rodriguez, and I'll talk about Daverson Gutierrez. But Ronald Hernandez is an interesting guy. Him and Vargas, to see the two guys, the two OBP guys of the Mets farm system. I'm curious what another year in is going to do. He's going to have to keep being pushed to higher levels at this point. But I want to see what kind of excitement he could bring in the 2025 season. And then again, now I just mentioned him, Daverson Gutierrez, one of those super high bonus guys before Giovanni Rodriguez, like the class before it. Uh, I do like him very much defensively. I think on social media, I've been throwing out names that are Mets related, like, hey, he's the next Ali Sanchez. Not a lot of power, enough of a hit tool, doesn't strike out that much, doesn't walk that much. Could be a bat on ball type of guy. But then he ended up having a very strong 2024 minor league season offensively. It's honestly something I wasn't even, didn't even know it was going to happen until it started happening. The numbers were looking pretty good for Daverson Gutierrez. Does that mean I need to change my thought process that he might be a future backup catcher? I mean, maybe. I hope he proves me wrong. Um, I do still like the idea of Daverson Gutierrez, who was already improving from the beginning, from the DSL phase. Even he was doing really well progression wise. So now I'm curious again here in the States. He's still technically a teenager. I'm not even sure when he turns 20. But Daverson Gutierrez is going to be an interesting guy to follow up the levels to see, can he be a starter? Should he just be a backup? What kind of power is he going to show? I'm curious to find out. Now, another guy, again, I'm picking guys that all seem to be utility type players. The new Mets, all the farm players seem to play multiple positions. But one guy I can't even figure out what the position will be still is Julio Zayas. Julio Zayas is a guy, even from the beginning, from last year or so, when I started asking about him, to me, the implication from the Mets sources, he seems to be a bat first guy. Even from the IFA class, he was signed because of his bat. Usually you should be anyway as a hitter, but I think it's being implied a little extra. Like, well, we're going to try to figure out the positioning later, but it was hard to not want to recruit and sign a bat like this, which is why they took him, and they were happy to have him in his IFA class. Not a super huge bonus guy, I don't believe, but they believe in the bat. But I'm curious again, where is he going to play anywhere around the diamond? It's going to be interesting, what glove is he going to be wearing for Julio Zayas? But Zayas is also still very young. I think, believe still technically a teenager. Going to hit that 19, 20-year-old age gap, which for IFA guys, it's almost put up or shut up already by 19, 20, 21, because you're already been in multiple years in the system. You got to figure out, where do you go? Again, Stearns pushes guys. So this is a guy who might almost get lost in the fold, but the bat is going to have to be huge, especially even in 2025. There's multiple players kind of grouping up together in similar-ish positions around the diamond. He's going to have to separate himself purely on his bat. Obviously, the super guy that I was talking about is Giovanni Rodriguez. He's still obviously very young. And now that I'm going to start obviously hyping up Elian Pena a bunch, but Giovanni Rodriguez, to me, he's the guy that was hyped to me very high from the IFA class. So he was obviously their top guy. The Mets felt they were literally signing the number one guy in that class. So again, arguably, Giovanni Rodriguez in the previous IFA class, they feel he was number one. I believe he ended up being maybe fourth or fifth or sixth, depending on national publications, how they rank the classes. But Mets felt they had the top dog. They have huge expectations for Giovanni Rodriguez still as basically a balanced extra tool player. They do like him behind the plate defensively with his glove. They do like the bat tool, the hit tool. Not sure again on the power now. Again, Davison Gutierrez and Giovanni Rodriguez, who I think is a future top three Mets prospect. I don't know if Giovanni Rodriguez is going to be a Alvarez home run guy. I don't know if he can get to 20 plus, but he seems like a really good, well-balanced kind of player who can do both very successfully. So more than adequate defensively, more than adequate hit tool would be the projection and the ceiling. So again, he would be an everyday catcher, projection-wise, ceiling-wise. So I'm curious where they're going to put him up the levels, how much time he's going to get. Are they going to even have him play anywhere else, depending on if there's groupings of guys kind of boxed in together? But Giovanni Rodriguez is still technically the guy. I'm going to keep hyping him all year. Going in a different direction, pure utility player, non-roster invite for Luke Ritter. Finally, I feel like he's 40 years old at this point. Luke Ritter is still around. He's the home run, strikeout, and walk guy of the Mets farm system. How do you project a guy like this? The guy looks like he's a walking 30 home runs in the minor leagues per year. But how is it going to translate because of the high K rate? But again, he hits a lot of home runs. He walks. He can play multiple positions. Now, super utility would be the name. Is he above average at any of the fielding positions? I'm not really aware of an above average kind of designation at any of them, but first, second, maybe even some third, maybe a little bit of outfield. He can basically play anywhere. So even again, if you needed a backup first baseman somewhere during the year, he could be the guy to finally get that call up. Because even if the K rates are high, he's always one home run away at any moment with his bat. So I'm curious if Luke Ritter is finally going to get a chance in 2025. But again, the Mets are always all in now. So it's going to be interesting how he would even be able to make the active roster at any point. How many, situations would have to go wrong. One of the guys that I love, utility player, I've interviewed him, so obviously I have a bias. DeAndre Smith is now hopefully going to be another healthy season for him in 2025. When I interviewed him before the last season, that's when I was trying to break the news of sorts that he was going to be a huge utility player because he had mentioned getting time infield and outfield. And sure enough, he played at least about 5 different positions, infield, outfield last year. But He had an early injury on like a freak accident in the outfield going for a ball, and it kind of slowed development the entire year. By the time he came back, he was trying to get his feet wet. I believe in August, the 1 month that maybe he was his healthiest, he hit 325 in the month with an 842 OPS. So that was when he was his hottest and hopefully healthiest. And my understanding, he's continuing to build on that now in this offseason. So DeAndre Smith is still looking for the versatility, play multiple positions, be ready, and have the strengthening to play all of them again. So he could be that guy all over the infield and outfield in 2025. What levels? Would he have to repeat Brooklyn? He may have to, based on roster and structure and how the teams are going with their affiliates. But I would like to see DeAndre Smith get tested in Binghamton, because that's obviously double A, show me level. He's going to have to get there sooner or later to see if he can take that next step and how much that versatility is going to help him get there. Uh, Different kind of, again, another guy doesn't, I don't know where to play him, but I believe even Keith Law is a huge fan of Boston Jeff McNeil Barrow. Uh, he's the guy or the kid drafted out of high school. He kind of looked like Jeff McNeil, very tall, very skinny. He put on a bunch of weight. The coaches had told me he put on over 25 pounds last year. From the draft to last year, he already put on the weight, and it was more muscle being packed. Played through the year. They like his swing. I like the bat to ball skills. Defensively, I'm still on the fence again. Where does he play like 100% full time? I'm curious to see if they want him to be like second base, third base. I would like to see Boston Barrow get time in the outfield to see how he looks. But he could be one of the better bats in the 2025 season for Boston Barrow, because, again, he's very young. Stearns pushed him very far. He was off to a hot start in low A, and then Stearns just sent him to Brooklyn. And he struggled in the beginning because he got pushed, which is what Stearns' MO seems to be. You want to be tried, you want to be good, go. So I would assume he's going to have to repeat Brooklyn. And I think it's going to be a good idea. And I think he's going to start off hot. I like the idea of him. There's confidence in him within the organization. And again, if Keith Law likes him, there's a lot of national people then that have their eyes on him, giving good reports. One of the forgotten guys in the Mets system who we all know about Jet Williams, Drew Gilbert. They were injured all year, but we're forgetting about Jacob Reimer, who, in my opinion, was kind of the quasi. I don't want to count Beatty and Mauricio anymore. They're older. Reimer was the guy for like a future third base tag as a projection in a few years. Jacob Reimer has a good bat to ball skills. He could be a very good OBP guy. Defensively with Reimer, I know there's not a lot of super excitement about his glove at third base. In St. Lucie, they were trying him at first base, probably also out of making room for all the players. He didn't look super well-rounded at first base when he was doing it, because it was probably the testing phase anyway, doing what he can. It would probably be best for him as a player in pro baseball to settle in back at third base one way or another. But I'm curious to see what kind of development Jacob Reimer can have this year in 2025. He needs a healthy season. Is he still going to be an A-ball somewhere to get his feet wet? I mean, he's the guy too. Could be very interesting player. One of the bats you hear about, even again, top 30, top 20. Can he move higher than top 20 as a healthy player in 2025? I think he's that kind of guy as far as being well-rounded enough with the walks. I think he could accumulate enough to be a top 20 Mets prospect. One of the other guys, when you talk about guys, you have Matagrill, you have everyone wants Iglesias back. Who's going to be the backup shortstop? Is it Acuna? But the guy I started bringing up recently was Wyatt Young. He seems to be the another version of Luke Ritter, where no one talks about him for different reasons. But Wyatt Young is a bat-to-ball machine. He's going to get his hits. He's going to get a high average throughout the minors. He always has. Defensively, he's like Luis Guillorme 2.0 at second, short, and third. You can put him anywhere in the infield, and you can trust him. The pitchers obviously loved him. He was one of their favorites in the minor leagues because he got to everything. Whenever I would talk to a pitcher who pitched at the same level as Wyatt Young, they were like, thank God he's there, because I know if it's anywhere near him, there's going to be an out. So to have a guy like this with bat-to-ball skills, Again, like another version of Luke Ritter, but does Wyatt Young get a chance? Maybe even not now with the extra depth with Beatty and Mauricio all of a sudden playing maybe second, third, with Acuna now almost entrenched as an option for the AAA to majors. I don't know how you even find room for a Wyatt Young, but if he had to be inserted for emergency purposes, I would love the idea of him to get that shot. Uh, Another guy, he's still kind of early-ish, but he was a college bat, so we're still trying to feel it out. But outfielder Eli Serrano has been getting some good projections and ceilings and some excitement from some of the other national prospect rankings that are going out there on websites. So I'm curious, since they like his swing so much, if Eli Serrano can take that kind of leap. The Mets outfield in general as a farm system, it doesn't look super exciting. Like you're not thinking of a future names that you would project out. Who were some of the top guys? Because Alex Ramirez and Stanley Consuegra both had down years in 2024. Nick Morabito looks to be more of a full-time outfielder at this point, even though he tried a little bit of infield after the draft. Is Nick Morabito one of the top outfield prospects? But again, can you put a Eli Serrano over a Nick Morabito based on certain overall hit tools? I'm curious to see. He needs to be an upper minors guy, so that's why he's going to have to be tested one way or another. Put Serrano in Double A, see what happens at the show me level. Could he be a guy? I don't know about a Drew Gilbert level guy, but or a Carson Bench. That's what I'm saying. Eli Serrano's he's kind of fallen amongst the different pecking orders at this point, but he's being ranked by a lot of publications in the Met system, so they see something in him. So I want to see how he progresses. The other guys are my two wild card power bats that could, I don't know what's going to happen. Boom or bust. The boom or bust category for the true boom hitters would be the AJ Ewing and Jeffrey Barry Bonds Rosa. Both of these guys, position wise, again, I remember I was told Jeffrey Rosa may have one of the strongest outfield arms in the Mets system in general, regardless whether it's IFA to AAA. I'm sorry, DSL to AAA. He may have one of the strongest top three arms in the whole system. So he's got a cannon. I know he hits home runs, but he seemed to have gotten exposed at stateside last year. And then Stearns even tried to push him to low A. That didn't work out. He had to go back to the complex league. Ends up almost being a washout year for him. So how is he going to bounce back? And then for AJ Ewing, he started off hot. It looked like he hit a home run every other night early, I believe, in the complex league. And then things slowed down. But again, there was high K rates. So you got AJ Ewing, Jeffrey Rosa, two power bats, high K rate bats. How is that going to project up the levels? Because those things can kind of go awry or amiss when you get to like high A, double A. So it's going to be interesting how those two guys go because there's not a lot of power bats in the Mets farm system overall. Like when you really think 30, 40 home run bopper guy, there's like a Ryan Clifford in a lot of people's minds. But is there anyone else? It's going to be interesting to see if one or both of them can kind of lower the K rate enough to have a high enough hit tool to be a top 20, or better prospect in the system. The other guy or kid at this point, he's getting older finally, turning 19, 20. Simon Juan, one of the huge high bonus babies of a few years ago. He's getting older. He had a really good spring training last year, like getting some hits in major league spring games. And then the year went and he did okay. We didn't hear anything super huge in the box scores or even behind the scenes about Simon Juan. So I'm curious, what kind of prospect is he at this point at such a young age still? I'm still excited about Simon Juan because the coaches told me he can still be a real player. They felt that his first glimpse of stateside was kind of rough because a lot of kids from the Dominican or from the other countries, when they come in, first year stateside is not always super easy for these players to adjust to everything that goes in and out of baseball. So I was waiting on that. But then again, the season happened now. I don't know how excited I am, but I feel like there's still something there. It's hard to give up on a guy or a kid so young, still producing enough of a batting average, enough of a hit tool, even in an up and down version of a season. So I'm excited to see if Simon Juan can take another leap into that like top 10, 15-ish category of Mets prospects. Now we might as well end this or second half this kind of thing talking about pitchers. Dom Hamill, Blade Tidwell, both have elite stuff. Should both go to the bullpen. Someone's got to do it. Who's going to be the next Jose Buto? Who's going to be the next Dedniel Nunez? Starters who were kind of moved to the pen one way or another. Dom Hamill and Tidwell. Is now the time? Is 2025 the season? Speaking with some of the higher ups in the Mets, when you ask them about top three at this point, it's changed over the years. Like last year, I thought it would be like, Tidwell, Hamill, Vassell. And now all of a sudden, when you ask who's the top three, Sproat, Tong, and McLean, it kind of jumped very drastically following the 2024 season. It doesn't mean that Hamill still doesn't have K-rate stuff. Tidwell has some elite stuff. Question is the consistency and the command. And again, could they be used as like 7th, 8th inning type guys? Maybe that's a potential you can go with either one. Not even just a long man situation like with Buto being announced in camp, but can Tidwell or Hamill possibly even be high leverage, 1 inning relievers? It's something that may have to be kind of tested out there, especially again, you still have McGill. Now you have Griffin, Canning. They have these depth starters that are going to be between majors and minor leagues, AAA. You can't have a 7-8 man AAA rotation. I'm curious what they want to do finally. If this is going to be the year, do they definitely want McLean to be a starter or a reliever? If McLean is still going to be a starter, if Tong and Sproat are the top 2 pitchers in the farm system, where does a guys like Hamill and Tidwell fit in, who've already have AAA experience? There's nowhere else to go. Could they finally take the final leap from the bullpen perspective? The other guy who's like another wild card is Jonathan Pintaro, who's like showing up on top 30 Mets prospect list, probably because the box scores were so sexy last year. So he's a guy, even talking to the pitching coach last year, he's like, dude, we think he's for real. Projection-wise, ceiling-wise, not an ace, but they really like him. And like from where he was coming from, kind of out of nowhere, Pintaro, they feel like is the real deal as far as being able to reach the majors as is, being who he is. So I'm curious to see if this is the year that he eats those innings in AAA and makes it. Between him and one of my favorites for years, Yoander Suarez. Can Suarez or Pintaro quietly show up in Queens this year where no one's really talking about them? Hopefully you guys can remind me on Twitter and give me my little pat on the back if either Pintaro or Yoander Suarez get called up, because once the beat writers and everyone gets a hold of it, they'll all start looking for background and information. You've already been told about them since even last year into this year. So be on the lookout if one or even both of them, because the inevitable usually happens in baseball, they may both make a major league pitch this year. The other guy is the newer guys from the last draft class. I brought it up in my last video. I want to talk about it again because the coaches are really excited about the idea of another wild card arm in Will Watson. I'm curious. It reminded me of when I was told about Austin Tresser last year, last camp, as a wild card player development college arm. So it kind of sounds like they weren't polished out of college. So there was going to be a growth spurt in pro ball. And I feel like Austin Tresser might have had an issue with some injuries. So now hopefully he's healthy so he can start back. But Will Watson seems to be the 2025 version of the wild card arm. Now, can I consider him a wild card like a Paul Gervais and a Tyler Stewart that ended up blossoming again last year and now with other organizations? I'm curious to see, but coaches really like Will Watson just overall as a pitcher. So do the quote unquote stuff is above average in their mind overall talent wise. So I'm curious how that's going to translate onto the field, pitching a lot more innings now, obviously, in 2025. And even another wild card of sorts will be from the last draft, Tanner Witt. I even tried asking around, like, dude, I haven't even spent a lot of time with him since the draft. So I'm curious to see he gets things going now in 2025 as well. The last 2 names I want to mention is the young kid who's still a teenager, Franklin Gomez, who was already pitching at 18 in A-ball in St. Lucie. He's only 19 years old. The lefty, Franklin Gomez. I used to joke about him being with the little giant. They love him. Coaches love him. They said he's extremely strong, powerful young man. They love the idea of him. Looked like he had an up and down season last year, but I'll take it. The K rate was about 9-ish, so that's great for a teenager with a 9-ish kind of K per nine for a teenager in A ball. The walks were up and down. The consistency wasn't there. So 19 years old, 18. So I'm curious to see if he can take a leap. And again, can someone like this at a young age, 18, 19, 20, should the Mets move him full time as a reliever? Should they keep trying to have him eat 3, 4, 5 innings an outing? Again, it's decision making at this point. Stern seems to be making quicker decisions on certain players. So now I'm wondering, pitcher wise, if he's going to go quicker from starter to reliever to see how those things pan out. The last guy I want to mention is because it was mentioned to me again by a minor league coach, Jack Wenninger. They feel he's also for real. So I'm curious to see what kind of leap Jack Wenninger can make. He's already showing up on top 30 Mets prospect lists. Uh, what would be the gap between Wenninger and Sprout Tom McLean? I don't know how huge of a gap it is, but they seem to really like him. He's got different stuff than them. I don't believe he's a 95 plus guy. I think he's probably a 93 to 95 fastball at its highest velo. So he's going to be more of a stuff guy, and he has a high K rate in these kind of low levels in A ball. So he's striking out a lot of guys in A ball. So he's going to be one of those guys I need to see in Double A for sure at the show me level. Because if Jack Wenninger does really well in Double A, he throw the prospect list away. He may have to be one of the top 3 pitchers in the farm system, depending on how he produces more than the ceiling projections, age stuff. He could be a guy who comes out of nowhere, like maybe hopefully a Pintaro or Suarez in 2025. Could that be Wenninger in 2026? It all depends on 2025 season first, which, by the way, is almost here. I'm excited. I guess it's one way for me to announce officially that I did have and receive word that I will be given media credentials again for the 2025 minor league season for the St. Lucie Mets. So I guess look for me out there at Clover Park with my media badge. I'm excited again to have the credentials, cover the team once again. If you guys can continue to support me, support this little show of mine. If you want to get any plugs, let me know. Make a little donation to the cause for Poor Earn. Try to help me out so I can try to build this the best that I can. And even before I go, shout out Sportswire Radio, SPORTZ, wireradio.org, and also maxmets.blogspot.com. Support all these content providers. Please support me. And hey, I'll see you guys next time.